Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back for another slime video, and it is time once again to update the monthly tier list with the new batch of units, this time being the New Year's Blessing characters and the skill-fused Fire Millum, who is also on New Year's Blessing. So we've got these units, we've got free-to-play Benimaru, and then we've got the two protectors to rank. Overall, this meta was, I would call it fine, right? It didn't blow me away. It doesn't do oodles of boodles of damage like blue stacking teams. Oranges are still not the most favored team in the game, considering a lot of stages just straight up nerf them. So they're kind of in a tough spot. They're playing with their backs against the wall already, which doesn't make it great. And since all the protectors do roughly the same thing, it shows a little bit of lack of imagination on the developer's part as far as how to make an orange team good, except put more buffs on the protector, right? Because Hakuro, skill chain, or orb change in 40 points. Toa, orb change 40 points and extra skill points on greens. Millum, orb change 40 points and pierce on magic. And now we have Xion, who's orb changing, passively giving 30 points for every turn for like 4 turns, and then getting crit and synergy for physical. So it's like you see the pattern. It's pretty basic. But I guess we can start with said protector. Xion. Like, I just got done bashing her because she's formulaic and boring. However, we cannot discount the fact that she pretty much neutralizes anything in Valor Cup. Like, running Xion and this Rimuru together with, a few other units makes Valor Cup, instead of being, like, horribly painful, it makes it horribly easy and boring. Because it's a very brain dead team. And, with Valor Cup, especially with the reset that just happened, Valor Cup has a lot more, value to play, and that cannot be understated. So, I would put her up into S tier because, like, yeah, you can't use oranges everywhere, but where you can, she's gonna murder it. In Valor Cup, she is like the go-to unit now, and I don't think we can undersell that. In fact, I would probably bring Toa down a bit. With Hakuro, because they basically do the same thing now. I think I'm okay with that ranking. I would. Does she match Millum? I think she's better than Millum technically, but we'll leave Millum up here for now. I think Velzard goes down. I think Diablo goes down. I think this Veldora goes down. And honestly, if you have the pretty sparkle team, I think Rimuru is godly because you cannot die, and you're stacking magic attack up and up and up and up. So running Rimuru on the pretty sparkle team, he is godly. Running him not on the pretty sparkle team, I'd put him in A, but we'll put him up here because it's kind of hard to argue against being invincible, literally invincible. But Xion is a solid protector who eviscerates Valor Cup. Benimaru free-to-play protector is doing quite a bit. He's full orb changing blues to oranges. He's giving a 80% chance to crit for physical, and he's giving you 20 skill points. That's better than what this Xion does. That's better than what this Orc does. I mean, he's just pretty much an updated Orc of Disaster. Would I put him up into this tier of characters, though? With Vengeance Albus and Idol Chloe, who is also making people invincible? That might be a harder sell. I'm going to put him in C tier for now. Because I don't think he quite competes up here. But I think he is more useful than not when compared to some of the other protectors, especially like the old ones. So you could either, in your tutorial multis and you're a new player, you could either pull these guys and you could be like, are they good or not? Or you could use Benimaru, who's actually pretty decent for a free-to-play protector. But that is that. Let's move on to the free-to-play Diablo. He unfortunately is quite restricted, right? He's giving away New Year's orbs only, so if you try and bring him on a team that doesn't have any other New Year's characters, he can only give away his own orbs, and you're not always guaranteed to have his orbs. And then his gauge buff increase is only for New Year's characters, so he is disturbingly limited, which bumps his ranking down into B tier. If he was like physical ally orb change and gauge increase, he might be up into A or even S tier because he'd be a triple orb swapper. But because he's limited to one team that only sees buffs to the team once every year on friggin' New Year's, Diablo's not going to have a good place in the game outside of January, any January at this point, moving forward. So, man, you could even argue him going down to C tier because of how limited he is. In fact, we're going to put him in C tier for now. There's just that huge gap in between being useful on a lot of teams and being really, really useful on your own team and being shit on everywhere else. And I think, unfortunately, his shit on everywhere else grouping is a lot thicker than really good on his own team. So, C tier for Diablo. If you want to argue and you put him in B tier, fine, I would get it. But, man, I'll ask you in 6 months when's the last time you used Diablo. And if you tell me twice or even once, I'm going to call you a straight fucking liar. So, unfortunate for Diablo, but he's supposed to fit with the meta, I guess. Next, we have the new battle units. We'll start with Fire Millum's skill fusion. She's currently ranked in B tier, can be helpful, and you know what? I think she still can be helpful. The only thing they did with her is they made her buff 2 turns. So, like, the crit seal and the guaranteed crits. The crit seal is nice, because she's still only one of two characters that do that. I might be forgetting one more, but 2 off the top of my head. And that's great. It costs 55 points, so it's quite expensive, and there's a lot of units that give crits now, or some way to get crits, and you don't have to use her anymore. And they didn't give her like an extra crit power or anything like that. They just made it 2 turns. So I don't think it's super duper impactful that warrants her moving up in any of the lists. But now let's rank. Rimuru. Rimuru is a very solid, generic nuking character. He's self-sufficient because he's got his own buffs, a weakness strike, which if you're not going against a dark unit, doesn't matter because you're not weak, or they're not weak to you. So that's situational, because if you're using him as a generic nuker but not against a dark enemy, half of that skill is going to be wasted. His other effect, 40% attack, is useful everywhere. So I mean that's good. At least he can buff himself in all scenarios, not just limited time. And then he's also got his very, very helpful self-convert to rainbows, which we know how good rainbows are, right? With the Unity Orbs, with this Coleus Rimuru, and he is really good, and especially in Valor Cup. I haven't updated the Valor Cup rankings in like a year or something like that. I don't know if I will, but I will just make it clear that if you have the new Xion and this new Rimuru in Valor Cup, as long as you have like one other unit, you can nuke with pretty much anything, and it makes it grossly easy. So I'm going to put Rimuru up into SS, great on most teams, purely for the fact that he is, a buffing character for himself, and he can use rainbow orbs, which can benefit any team, essentially. And that's why this Coleus Rimuru is up here, because he can benefit literally any team. They're both limited in their Unity Orb usage in their own way. Like, he has to have blues to convert, he has to have his own orbs to convert, but either way, you can make it work. And you can bring a lot of gauge real fast, and a lot of ult to anybody that you really need to prioritize. So I think he's fairly good. Now we'll go with Millum. So Millum has the Future Hand of Oranges, just like Hinata, second anniversary Hinata. So that's kind of the same. And then her other buff is ult resistance down and 20% synergy power, which ult resistance down is cool. We do have a number of units that do that now. And synergy power, 20%, like, it's only a 40-point skill. We have to keep that in mind. It's not a super high-cost 80-point skill, so it's not going to have super high-powered numbers. But to this day, we are still very limited in the amount of units that can give synergy rate. So that cuts her usage down to, I think, A tier. Decent, but limited. You need to have synergy rate to be able to unlock that full power, and then the ult resistance down isn't the highest thing in the world. Like I said, there are other units that can do that effectively. Raphael is up here, Violet's up here. We're going to get more in the future, but until synergy becomes much, much more relevant, as time goes on, I think she will remain in A tier, decent but limited. Which brings us to Shinha, who is our first orange alt swapping unit, and that alone makes her very good. Even though I've been shitting on orange teams all day and saying that they don't get help a lot, when they do get help, the team is very boring and generic, and the game doesn't like orange teams in general. But the fact that she is an orange converter means that we have people to cover all three colors now, which in itself is good. You can put her on an orange team. Her other skill is the physical allies ult damage for 80%, and then the 40% crit damage for everybody. She is kind of like a reverse version of Warrior's Mind Violet up here, where Violet has, the self-convert for blues, she has the physical allies crit damage, and then the ult resistance down, so it kind of backwards a little bit. Ult damage for physical, physical crit, but crit power and crit power, you get what I'm going for, right? You can put Shinha on almost any team that's physical based, and she will work exceptionally well. So I'm going to put her up into really good because she's got the alt swap ability. She's got a pretty generic buff, and even if you don't use her for her alt swap ability, if you're running a physical team and you don't have an alt buffer, you don't have this Warrior's Mind Violet, then she's going to be a great addition for that team. Now, that's with the caveat that we have a lot of alt buffers already, right? And she is limited in that aspect to where it's only physical characters get it. But if you're running her on a physical team, which you probably should be, then you'll be maximizing her buff. But Guy also exists, right? Guy has an 80% alt buff with guaranteed crit rate, which can pair well with crit damage right here, but we're already getting alt from, one of them. So I don't know if bringing both of them on the same team would be priority, but I mean, you certainly could. But there's a lot of teams that you can put her on. So I think she's really good. I don't think she's great on most teams. I think she's really good for a lot of teams. But I mean, those are the tier list rankings. I don't really feel like moving anybody else on this list down. This list I think is fine for the most part. And then, yeah, we just made that change to Rimuru up here. I mean, Frey is getting old. She'll probably get moved down rather soon, but she is still giving physical characters crit. Hey, where does Shinha work? On a physical team, and she needs someone to proc that crit rate for crit damage, right? So you could put her on a Frey team. I mean, the alt swap to orange you could use because you would just convert it with Frey. So I mean, you can make room for Shinha. It's difficult to make room for Millum because she is very heavily geared towards orange, and her buff just isn't really all that impressive, but you can make room for her somewhere. And then Rimuru is generically good. So those are the tier list rankings for the month of January 2024. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with my placements, but that's it from me, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.